figures about the housing deficit or level of housing deficit. And they also have figures about how housing can be used to transform an economy. Professor Paul Cody, for instance, that you have invited to when you were governor to the Lagos Economic Summit, talks about in very emotional way how Britain used housing to change its economy, elevating people from poverty to middle class. How does a government that is challenged by revenues, as indeed we are today, begin to use housing? And people talk about 13, 14, 10, 14 people to build a house. If you build $1 million a year, that is easily 13, 14 million people in employment. What's your own concept around the housing?
I've said that because it needs a plan. And it's not those plans that we have talked about. It's a programmatic plan, for want of a better definition. A program of this is the first step, this is the next step, this is the other step. All of what we've had policies, yes, affordable housing. How? First problem, a national housing scheme must have nationally acceptable designs that people own. If they don't own it, then the project is dead on arrival. And we've seen those limitations with some previous initiatives. Secondly, if you don't have that plan, then you can't implement consistently. And that is why when we talk about housing, we talk about Jakonde and we talk about Shagari. You know what? That's almost 40 years ago. Because there was no program subsequent to that that ensured that we built every day. Now in Paul Collier's country you were talking about in the UK, they've been building every day, every year since 1918. The National Housing Program is going to be 100 years old in 2 years' time. So I am working on a similar program. So that program is not defined by the size of the deficit, whose numbers can be very, very vigorously disputed because we don't have a very reliable database from our last census. We tweaked the figures. I challenged those figures in court and I won the census tribunal. So the result of the database, therefore, is questionable.
Yeah.
What is unquestionable is that we haven't built at the scale at which we have
Population is
grown.
growing.
So there must be a gap somewhere. But my focus first is a plan. Now you were talking about funding. Funding is not always the problem. You know, all of the mess that we have happened when we earned more money.
That's Nigeria's paradox.
We earned more money at the time we had our biggest underdevelopment. So it's not about money. It's about planning and programming and implementing. Now if you don't sit down to do the hard work, then you can't do it.
Yeah.
It's mental and human. So design first. Sell that design. So we've sorted out the design. We've seen climatic diversity, we've seen cultural diversity, we've seen economic diversities. They've gone into informing our designs. So we now have two broad sets of designs broken down into 6 units. Largely bungalows in the north, blocks of flats and some bungalows in the south. Because they won't take flats in the north. So if you build it there, you just lost the initiative. Now, standardize the component inputs. Your doors, your windows, your fittings. Because you need your local industry to supply it.
Yeah.
If you import them, you've lost the economy.
Yeah.
Handshake with Ministry of Trade and Investment, Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, Bank of Industry, so that they can fund those cottage industries.
Yeah.
So we've listed about 10 items. Doors, windows, ceiling, tiles, paints, all of those things,
roofings,
plumbing, that we will not use any imported one on our site. Then industrialize construction so that you can do more.
Yeah.
So that is where we now need some external support, and we found it. Firm work building allows you to build more in less time. And you will see I went to visit sites like Lafarge because they have some models. I went to visit a polystyrene firm in Abuja. They use polystyrene material to build very quickly. So we are now looking at how we can now get that to field. We now have design, we have standards, we're now seeing the people who can do scale, and we want to create a marriage. That is when we go to finance. That's when we say, now we can do 200 in a year, or we can do 10,000 in a year. This is what's called give us the money. If you have that plan, you will find the money. So that's what we're finalizing. But we have 35 billion in our budget. We hope to use that 35 billion. If the president's plan for emergency powers are approved, it means that we can inject like 17 billion at the award of contracts.
Interesting.
If it doesn't happen, it means that we only put 15%.
I get it.
The more you put out, the more
you can quickly create activity.
When you create activity, you will be seeing that the index created by lack of money last year will change because there's more money in the system. That's the economic story. That for me is the way out of recession. So by the time you are measuring end of year, you begin to see the trickle effect over 73 billion in
housing
in works. But I don't have the figures for power with me, but I will supply them.
Okay, that was the
Some monies have been paid out. Some monies are also being paid. I think in housing we just paid out. We had about 5 billion that we've been paying debts we owed. So that those contractors. That's one of them. The Zik Masolion was one of them.
You talked about that.
Federal secretarial projects across. So we started going back.
Interesting.
So that's the economic story.
You are a very prominent face in the government, but that's not the reason why I'm asking you. You are a minister in the government. Things are difficult. Nigeria is in recession. For many of our young people, they may not have heard that word before, but certainly they have never felt it before. That is beginning to show in the level of anger out there in the public, and also in the lives of people. How do you begin as a government to recreate that bulwark of political support and empathy that brought this government to power, given the situation that I've just illustrated?
Well, the elections are over. The support and the empathy had a context. They had a context in yesterday. Because if yesterday was good, we wouldn't be here.
If it was good, they would not have voted you in.
Yes.
So
clearly. Clearly. Let's just speak. Now, as far as anger is concerned, I started by first speaking about the forbearance. Again, I reiterate it. Anger is not a strategy. Quite correctly, our threshold to crisis differ from people to people. But anger is not a strategy.
I agree.
Now, in terms of recession, this is the third one I'm seeing in my lifetime. I hope that it will be the last one, not because I'm about to die. I want to live long. I hope it will be the last one because of the policies that this government is committed to in terms of really now diversifying the economy. For real. We've mounted it, but because of the petrodollar, we didn't walk our talk. So the recession is not unique to us. So we can see America came out of a recession. So getting angry is not going to get you out of recession. Doing what we are doing already, funding roads, solving power, building houses, creating jobs, putting money in an economy that had been starved of money.
Denied of funding.
Understanding that infrastructure really means brick and mortar, not infrastructure of the stomach, which was canvassed yesterday. All the kerosene, all the rice that was distributed yesterday was imported. It meant that all the income for producing it was left in factories abroad. What you got was the dash. That's the difference. So when people say there is no ideological difference, that's the ideological difference. Making it work at home, even though it's challenging. Because, as they say, it is only sweeter after adversity. There will be adversity. I've seen recession before. It happened in 1984, fortuitously around the time the president came.
Yeah.
I've talked to that generation of my children. They didn't hear about it. Essential commodity.
Yeah.
It's happening in Venezuela today, where people have to really queue. So before we get to Venezuela, let's work together and build. So it's not helpful to continue to damage pipelines. Anger is not a strategy. The economy just bleeds more. So price of oil has gone up from where we projected it would be, $38 to about 50. But are we getting the value? No, because we're selling less.
Yeah.
So everybody should just wake up and smell the coffee. Those who are angry and take the anger out on pipelines, just realize that all the workers in that region won't get paid because they won't get enough money.
Yeah.
But we can earn it. So anger is not a strategy. I've talked about our resilience, our indomitable spirit. There is no time like now. Elections are not the issue for us, for me, and I speak what I can contribute through my ministry to the total package, is to get the work done. Get our people to understand why we're in public service. It is because millions of lives of people we may never ever meet depend on what we do. That is the meeting I have with my staff periodically. That if you pass that file out quickly and we can pay that contractor, there are many Johns and Musa and Chinedu and Ismaila who you will never see, but because we acted quickly, their lives will change. So people shouldn't lose hope. We continue to run government, private sector plays its part, and that's how we'll get out of it.